I don't just take or accept the fact that the kids are 18 or graduate college and then they're out of our lives. I want to continue to foster travel together, time together, and opportunities for them to continue to hang out with us, participate because they want to, not because we're forcing them to, not because we're bribing them, but because it's just part of our kind of, I guess, our culture or part of our family dynamic.
My friend, your role as a father is critical. You do not hear this enough, but you matter. Thank you so much for being here, investing in yourself. Our world needs men like you stepping into fullness, taking responsibility of leading and loving their families. 3 nuggets that hit me from my conversation with my friend Jim Morrison today were: 1, the benefits of traveling with your family, the bonding, the growing that you will experience as a family. Number 2 is the value of failure, not just for you, but also for your kids. Failure is not a bad thing. And then number 3, maintaining relationship beyond your kids being 18. What does that look like and how do you cultivate it? Welcome to Fatherhood Field Notes podcast, where I interview truly incredible fathers, gaining wisdom from their stories for you and I to grow in our own craft of fatherhood. I am your guide, Ned Shout, father to 5 kiddos, currently ages 13 to 19, and husband to my rad wife, Sarah, working on our 21st year of marriage. So yes, my friend, I'm in the thick of it. I am in this with you, working daily to rebel against the low expectations for fathers and create a world where fathers know who they are as they show up for their families. You and I have the greatest opportunity to impact our world through the way we embrace our fatherhood role. Role of fathers to serve, guide, steward, protect, and of course, find joy and have fun in the messiness of it all. Today's guest is my friend, Jim Morrison. I have much respect for this man. He is a husband, a father, a business leader, a pillar in his community, and a man who humbly serves all that is placed in his path. You're going to enjoy the nuggets this man shares from his life of serving his family with intentionality. All right, Jim, welcome to Fatherhood Field Notes. How you feeling today?
Good. Thank you for having me, Ned.
Yeah, man. I was so stoked when we've kind of crossed paths a few times. We're in the same industry the past decade, but I was able to visit you in your incredibly epic office a few months back, and just looking at pictures of you and your family and all your guys' adventures and talking fatherhood, I thought it'd be a lot of fun to talk fatherhood with you.
Absolutely.
Well, here's the first question right out the gate. It's a softball. How old do you find yourself today?
I feel better than my age. I think age a lot of times is a mentality, like there's always bumps and bruises. I was abusive on my body when I was younger from sports and other, accidents and stuff like that, but I feel great.
Good. How many years have you been married?
26.
Nice. Okay. So you're just over that 25 hump. I feel like a lot of guys I talk to, they're kind of in between that 15 to 20. If you were giving a dude some advice who's maybe kind of at that 15-year mark, thinking about that 25 years, what's some words of wisdom you would give him?
Well, obviously, I think it's different for everyone, and that's a tough one, other than it's never going to be easy. Be committed to the long term. And there are times you're going to be like, oh, this is terrible, or this is not what I want, or the reality is you married that person for a reason. You're partners. You got to be in it for the long haul. I don't look at divorce as like a possible outcome. These are just bumps in the road, and then you get back on the road.
Where does that conviction that divorce isn't a possible outcome come from?
I'm not saying it's not possible in some circumstances.
Sure,
it's just that was something
that
I've committed to. I chose wisely. I think one of the bigger decisions in life is to pick the right partner and someone that builds you up and is an ultimate teammate. And so I felt like that was something that we mutually picked for each other. And it's never a straight line. We all have our challenges. We all have our hiccups, whether it's family or health or some other component. So I think that was a huge decision that was favorable in my part. Like we always joke, I married up, so life is good.
That's how you know somebody's a good salesman, right? Is when they've got the beautiful, committed, incredible wife. Jim, how many kids do you have and what are their ages?
I have 3 kids, 24, 22, and my youngest is going to turn 19 later this month.
Okay. Now, going back to the marriage component, since you're kind of in this phase, it's funny, my wife and I were on a date last night. We have 5 kids, ages 19 to 13. So we're like in this unique window of having 5 teenagers at one time. but my oldest is going to be 20. And I was kind of saying last night, because we have 4 girls, I'm almost in this season where it's not that I want my girls to get married right away, but I'm like kind of looking forward to the tension of them being 16 to 23, 24, 25, and them just having, like, pray to God, just a great husband. For you, your kids are just slightly a little level above where mine are at. What's
Yep.
the conversation you're having with them about that really big decision about who you're going to marry and who you're going to be in a relationship with and be spending life with? Now, I know your life is an example to them, but what kind of conversations have you been having?
Yeah, I mean, you already kind of hit on one of the areas, which is try to be a good example, try to be what they should expect, right? So, especially for our daughter, I want to mimic what she should expect in a
Mm-hmm.
future partner, and that's respect and other kind of just basically looking at it as a partnership. But really, you don't have to be in a hurry. Like that's something we talk about a lot. Like there's no rush. Some of their friends are starting to get married and go through those stages, but most of them that are at that stage have been together 4 to 7 years already, even at a young age. So they've had a long kind of history. But we share our story. Like we didn't get married until a little bit later in our late 20s, as it was. We had a repeat. Like we dated, took a break for 5 or so years, and then like
Okay.
kind of reconnected. We always stayed in touch, but it just I was young, I was immature, I was probably not the right time with a lot of stuff going on in life, and so it's not a race, right? Like it's a marathon. So make sure you're comfortable. Make sure these decisions and then when you do finally connect with someone and you think it's right, like talk it out. We highly encourage premarital counseling, and it doesn't have to be religious, although it's great if it is. But do you both want kids? How do you feel about one partner staying home and one partner working? Do you both want to work? Like there's a lot of things that if you could address ahead of time, I think you will basically avoid a lot of those pitfalls and some of those challenges if you assume something but you haven't discussed it. So communication is really big kind of component of it. Outside of that, we try not to give too much advice, right? We listen, we provide feedback when solicited, but we try to be just good examples and listen, which is a lost art more so than express just our opinions on everything.
Yeah. Okay. So much good quality stuff there. Listen over advice, especially at those ages, right? Those ages, they are like just kind of over the advice. And then what did you say about communication? Oh, don't assume. Don't assume,
Correct.
right? Have conversations about that. I think that's really important, right? Don't assume it's going to be a certain way. And then you did bring up marriage counseling. So you're helping probably to uncover any of those assumptions through somebody, asking strategic
Sure.
questions. You brought up a religious component. So, in what areas do you feel like a faith foundation is important for that? Because we're talking about that with our kids. So, we're like a Christian family. Church is important. We have seen some families where, one spouse believes one way, another spouse believes another. And it seems as though it can create, like, well, how are we going to teach the kids things or share the kids things? Like maybe some level of
Sure.
intimacy or vulnerability that I don't want to say it's lacking, but anyways, what is your philosophy on that? And what have you been passing to your kids?
Sure. So we have a religious foundation. We're a Christian family as well. All three of my kids went to a private Christian high school, and then inevitably they ended up in some sort of private college
Mm,
that has a religious aspect, although some are more casual about it than others. So the foundation is there. At this point, I'm not going to convert a 24-year-old by taking them to church today. So we've been doing this since they were young,
yeah.
and they do have that foundation, and I think that's important. And I do agree. I think they're even if you're not in the same faith, really kind of what like your expectations are for each
Hmm.
other for the holidays or for celebrating this or some people take a certain stance on something and you don't have to necessarily be 100% on the same page, but be aware because you don't want to find out 5, 6, 7 years into the marriage and then a kid comes along and then one wants to baptize them Catholic and the other has
Right.
no interest in doing that and is
Right.
completely opposed to that. Again, that's where I think that communication component comes up where I think it is important to have some areas that you have discussed and pre-planned, and not that you want to plan out every aspect of
Of
everything, but
course.
these little things start adding up, and this is where I think the general sentiment is that we're just growing apart. No, you're not. You
Mm.
just didn't discuss a lot of the things ahead of time. And so you have different views and you assume that they were going to follow your views and they may have assumed the opposite. And it doesn't work out that way.
Yeah. Yeah. So good. Okay, because of the season of life that you're in as well, what's something like sometimes I ask guys who have like a 5 year old or 10 year old, what is it that they want their kid to know when they're moving out of the house? And I know it's like if I could go back and have a 2 year old right now, I'd crush it because I know so much, so I think. But as you reflect on this season you're in, what maybe have you sat back and said, man, I'm so glad we taught our kids about X, Y, like this. I feel like we gave them a firm foundation or mindset around this. And then what's something you go, man, if I could have teleport myself back to when they were 5, I would have started teaching them about this, that, or the other. Did anything come up for either of those for you?
I think we put a pretty good foundation in on some basic things. Like we're a big traveling
Mm-hmm.
family. We love to travel as a family, and to make them independent, to be able to do so and understand how it works and basically acclimate and self-soothe, so to speak, or
Mm.
self-manage is huge. And so I think that was a big part of it. I think I've introduced financial literacy to all three of the kids on, what is credit? What does a credit card look like? What does a budget look like? And, this has really become applicable to my oldest son, who is, 2 years out of college, 2.5 years out of college, working in another city, thriving. And so for him, though, I think some of the challenge sometimes is I think he's doing well, but I think he thinks he should be further along in the process.
Mm.
And I have to remind him, like, that will come, right? That, be patient. You have to be in the right opportunity, be open to other opportunities, but you're 24 years old. You don't have to, solve all the world's problems. It will come with time. And so we do have a lot of, ironically, he's in a similar business in the insurance business, not in my facet. So we have a lot of good conversations about, things that we have that are overlapping in our two kind of complementary industries. And it's just interesting to hear his perspective. I will provide my perspective and it's good feedback. But I don't look back and think, gosh, I really missed this opportunity to do this, this, and that. No, of course, I would love more time, frankly, is always the one that, if I could go back and say, gosh, if I had a 2 year old or 5 year old, whatever, like every older person says, it goes by way too fast.
Right.
I mean, us becoming empty nesters just seemed like yesterday that we were, three people, we had three kids in strollers and stuff like that. And now they're, two in Texas and one in Northern California, and they're so independent. It's great to see, and we're happy for that launch, but we do love having everyone around.
Yeah. Yeah. So you talked about travel. This is something I wanted to bring up to you. But when you said travel, taught them how to travel self-soothe, what do you mean? What are those things that you would recommend people teach their kids about this?
Well, we have an expectation, whether it's a restaurant, an airplane, whatever, at any age, that they, hopefully aren't going to throw tantrums. Hopefully they're not going
Mm.
to disrespect the service people or the surrounding people, that they don't want to hear someone cry or whine or throw a tantrum, etc. And don't get me wrong, we had our challenges, but we did set the expectation. And so, hey, if we're going to be on a plane for 5 hours, what's some good things to do? Well, let's read some books, let's play some games, let's play cards, let's this and that. And we did have access to phones and iPads, et cetera, but we really did not use that as a crutch. We really
Mm.
tried to avoid that as much as possible. And so even now, I mean, this past summer, we did a family trip. I don't think we turned on a TV once
Wow.
in the entire time we were there. And then every night, one of the family members picked a game to play. So the five of us would play, whether it was a dice game, a card game, whatever. So the idea is, like, you have to be able to be on your own, right? Like there's five of us. We may have to deal with one of you. Like, you've got to take care of yourself to a point. And so that's what we try to instill in each one of them.
Yeah, so good. Okay, we'll come back to the travel stuff in a little bit. Okay, so you live in San Diego. We've kind of alluded to the insurance, but just take a minute. What is it that you do to provide value in the world and feed the family? And I ask this question because it doesn't matter really what we all do. A lot of times men ask each other what they do to size each other up, but I like to bring it up because it helps us understand the man we're talking to. And then you still had a 16-year-old at a certain time. You still had to deal with a 13-year-old. It doesn't really matter what your career was. We run into these scenarios. So, what is it that you do for a living and provide
Absolutely.
value?
Absolutely. So I'm an insurance broker that specializes in the group health insurance and employee benefits market. I've been doing it for 36 years,
Wow.
which seems crazy to me. And so we are a large independent firm here in Southern California, San Diego. And our typical client basically is like, 5 employees to about 350 employees. We do have bigger, but that's our sweet spot where we just have the majority of our business. We're in the majority of states across the country. And our heavy lift or our goal is to basically provide best in class service, translate a very difficult industry to understand to layman's terms, and then do all the heavy lifting behind the scenes. So everything from ACA reporting, COBRA management, onboarding, offboarding, answer questions on behalf of our clients so their HR teams are not taxed with benefit issues. They can focus on everything else but benefits because we do all the heavy lifting.
Yeah, man, you guys are crushing it. Office is epic. You guys do good work. It was inspiring to come spend some time with
Well,
you.
thank you.
In your opinion, what's the role of the father?
Well, it varies, but in general, I think it's to be, first of all, a great example, right? It's not do what I say, but don't do what I do kind of thing. And you got to live the walk. I think part of it is just being present. I think that's something that gets missed a lot, where you don't have to be perfect, and I am far from perfect. But man, if there every opportunity to show up to something and just be there, I was going to be there. Whether it's a school event, a sporting event, whatever. Even the other night, like my son was traveling internationally and flew into LAX, and I dropped my daughter off in the morning at like 6:30 in the morning at San Diego Airport, and then I was up at LAX at 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, picking up my other son in person. And we kicked around. Should we just get a car? Should we do Uber? Whatever. No, I want him to see me as the first person coming out of the customs. So just I think being present is probably my biggest component because we're all going to screw up. And like I said, I am definitely have made a lot of mistakes, but hopefully they'll remember that I was there.
Yeah, I mean, shoot, that's so simple to do. Going to pick your son up from the airport probably made more sense. You have the means to do whatever it is you want to do, but to be there. And then even still now it's like car time, right? Like being or windshield time, whatever you want to call it, is some of the
Yep.
best time to communicate and connect with your kid. And so I love that, right? If there's an opportunity to jump in the car with your kid, to drive around, to pick them up, whatever. I was just in Sacramento. My daughter had a layover for like 3 hours at Sac Airport. So I canceled my appointment, went and picked her up, and we went and ate some food together because there was just this small window to connect.
Sure.
And it's like,
Perfect.
those are the things too that our kids will remember, right? Like my dad was just there in times that weren't necessarily always like this super significant moment, but they were there and they feel like a priority, which matters because there's always 1,000 things we could be doing.
Yeah, I would always think if they, had a bus trip or something like that for something and they were getting picked up at school at midnight, I would be happy to go.
Mm-hmm.
And the other parents would be happy because I would pick up their kid too if they wanted me to.
Yeah.
But I thought that's so great. And then that was a big, you hit on something that just resonated with me. It's such a big deal when people get their driver's license, whether it's 16, 17. But enjoy that time prior to that because even if you're just sitting next to each other in the car going to school or wherever after school, whatever it is, that is huge, valuable time. Even if it's silent the majority of the time, which happens, you are still connecting, you're still there, et cetera. But once they get their license and some of these other things and start getting more freedom, man, that's tough to recapture. So enjoy it while it lasts.
It's hard. Last year, so my twins just turned 16 in July, so they just both got their license. They're my 3 and 4. And I was like mentally reminding myself last year when I'd have to drive places, this isn't going to last forever. And then, right. And then now sometimes it's like one of them will be driving somewhere. I'll be like, oh, can I go with you? Just so I could get more time with them. Okay. When did you embrace fatherhood? So you got married late 20s. You've been in the same career 36 years. So you've had this successful career path. A lot of us men can like dive into our careers as like the primary purpose to serve our families. But sure. when you think about it, was it like my wife got pregnant and I just couldn't wait? I knew it mattered. Or the first time when I saw my first baby being born? Or was it down the road from there? When did you really go, this matters and I want to lean into my role here?
Well, for me, I think it was a little bit towards the latter comments you made. Mm-hmm. Like I was excited about the baby, coming.
Yeah.
but I didn't feel like I had that the connection that my wife did
Mm.
to my oldest was a son. And so it took me, obviously him being born and connecting and doing all those things, but it was not like pre-birth. I was excited, but I didn't know what I
Right.
was, I
Right.
didn't know what I didn't know. And then then of course you see him or her and whatever your circumstances may be. And it's just like, oh my gosh, like this is a miracle. And then the other thing I learned is there's no manual, right? Like there's a lot of people with free advice and that's worth what you pay for it in many cases. So you're kind of just figuring it out. And so again, that I go back to the partner, like having an amazing partner and a good partner as part of that decision. Man, we figured it out together. And she obviously is a rock star, superstar, and I was along for the ride. And I credit her for all the successful stuff, and all the questionable stuff is probably my fault. But so it took a little while, but man, we have 3 kids, as I mentioned. Each one is so different.
Yeah.
And I mean, the bond is amazing with all 3, but it's just crazy how 2 people can produce 3 very, very different personalities and preferences and styles, which I love. And the fact that the 5 of us can get together and bond is awesome still.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. It's been funny lately. A couple of my teenagers, they'll give me crap like they'll partner up with my wife, kind of not against me, but they're against me for whatever reason. And they'll say, "You're not even related. Like me and mom are related. You're not related to mom."
Yeah,
It's funny how you have 2 different people from 2 different families come together and then create humans that are a little bit of you, a little bit of them, the good, the bad,
sure.
all of it, you know?
It is amazing.
As you think about your 24 years of being a father, can you think of a book that shaped you at all or shifted your perspective, had impact on the way that you lead?
So we read a ton, and I'm going to blank on all the names, but there were some really good books. The one that I think resonates probably the most with me, that is jumping right into my head, is a book called The Gift of Failure.
Hmm.
It really made an impact because I think the parent's natural instinct is to, and I've heard all these different terminologies, whether it's snowplow parenting or helicopter parenting or all these different things where they don't want their son or daughter to have any sort of hiccups or challenges or issues, and they all want to be winners, and we get participation trophies and whatever it may be. And it really was talking about failing is a gift, and it is a process, and it's how you respond from failing that basically really makes your character. And it has a whole section on grit, which is something that's really tough to teach, but it's something you can at least communicate on. And so that really made a difference to me because obviously I wanted my kids to win every soccer tournament and every this and that. And the reality is they probably grew and learned more from the less successful experiences than they do the successful ones. And so, that one stands out at me for some reason, but that one is one. And I've looked at that for my own personal component. I struggle with, the 4 groups we lost last year, not the 65 that we wrote.
Right. Right.
Even though 4 of them were out of my control because they got acquired by a bigger company and we didn't do anything wrong. And so I think focusing, but not dwelling on, but focusing, learning, adapting, and then moving forward is a huge part. And so that's what we try to teach our kids. And we joke, none of our kids got scholarships to college for any of their athletic endeavors. And that's okay. It's okay to be okay, just average. We don't have to be superstars. And did you have fun? Did you get the benefits of group sports, of team leadership, success, failure, bonding? Then it was a win, even if you didn't win every game.
Okay, so this idea of failure, if you kind of gave an example for high school, and if another idea comes up from how you let your kid fail in high school, let me know. The next question to kind of go along with that is, as you see the next 5 years of like college, starting a business, whatever it is they might want to do, what's your philosophy on like you're in a position to help them? Have you thought about, it's tough, right? I mean, I don't know. We were on free cheese and milk when we had the twins 16 years ago, right? So I was just getting in this business and we were broke. And now we live in Hawaii and our business is in California. It's like very different. So there's a different level of means to be able to support the kid. And so you want to find the balance of supporting them while also letting them earn some grit on their own. So, like an example for us right now, we have our first kid in college. She got some minor scholarships, nothing for sports or anything. So, you're wooey and things like that. So, for every dollar she pays for college, we'll match her dollar for dollar. So that's kind of the deal, right? And so she's almost with her second year done, college, no debt, right? Which is awesome. So, is there anything that you and your wife have kind of leaned into as here's how we want to show up for the kids in like this early young adult stage where we want tension, but we want to also help them?
So we've done a couple different things along those lines. Everything from our estate planning component, which we've communicated to them, they don't get a lump sum, right? They've got to have certain accomplishments, graduate college, start a business, different things, and it's paid. And heaven forbid it's applicable, it's paid out over time, right? We all have heard about that. 20-year-old that gets $1 million life insurance policy. Next thing you know, they're buying cars and they're dropping out of college or high school or whatever, and they're just making mistakes. So that's one. That's kind of on the over planning kind of component. But my wife and I talk about this regularly. Our kids will probably, and our oldest is a great example. He's going to have the income to be able to afford something in the future from a house standpoint, whether it's on his own or a partner. But the reality is not many 20-somethings have enough money for the down payment on its own. So selfishly, assuming it's going to be hopefully in somewhat close proximity to our San Diego home, we would likely do some sort of assistance, whether that's a matching program or something, because to us, family is everything, right? So like if he has the choice, like if in his mind, and I don't think he's quite at that point, but when and if he gets to it, if they get to the point, because the media kind of makes it sound like it's unaffordable to live in California, and it is expensive, so I don't doubt that. But if there's something we can do to get them over that hump to keep them close, we would absolutely participate in that. And so I think it'll be different for each kid, but that is something that we have talked about, because I don't want that to be self-defeating, right? Like they have the income, they've got this, they're doing all the right things, but they still can't afford to buy a condo or something. Then we're going to help them in some way. And we don't know what that is. It'll probably be different for each one, because they may have 3 different complete goals. But anyway, so stuff like that is stuff that we would try to knock down. And I don't look at it as a loan. I don't want to make it sound like that, because I don't want to, put kids in debt and, have an anchor that he's going to be, chasing him around for the next 20 years. But if it's something that we can participate in together and they're doing all the right things, and we have the ability to help come up with a down payment or part of a down payment or something along those lines, I think my wife and I would be very open to that. And selfishly, it's going to hopefully keep them close.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, those are similar thoughts, and I'm starting to pay attention to some different like podcasters and thought leaders in this space, especially around family. Like in some regard, I think it's funny. We were sitting around the table the other night talking about the culture of America. Like, what is our culture when you compare it to others? And like one of the things that seems to pop up is this individualism. And some of the issue with individualism is this like idea around just independence. Like I need to move out at 18 and I need to do everything on my own. But then you're like looking at this 30, 40-year-old who still has college debt, who is struggling to buy a house. And it's like the way that you look at a family that has kind of like built legacy, they're working together to establish, not just starting fresh every 20 years, you're starting fresh. That's impossible.
Right.
It's not impossible. It's just a struggle, so we're starting to have these conversations with our kids like, hey, if you need a year in between, like if you're not just waking up at 11 and pissing off the day, like we want to be able to have space for you if you want to gain a skill or start a business or start your family, or like we want to be a part of those. So we're starting to have those conversations. And frankly, I wish we would have started having them sooner. I do think living in Hawaii has helped, because there's a huge family essence here of like families working together and living together, et cetera. And some of that's out of necessity.
Yeah, well, and it was interesting because my middle son, who is a senior in college, and he's in a computer science, management, information systems kind of major, and that's his area of specialty. He came to us and he had done some spreadsheets and this and that with his income trajectory, and he thought he was going to have to move out of state or stay in Texas or move to Dallas or something like that. We're like, well, that's an option, but the reality is like maybe it's not too far off here. Let's look at some California numbers. Or, and again, we're not trying to coerce him into staying in California. We're just trying to open up his horizons to not just lock in because that seems like the only economic way.
Right.
And we actually modified it, and it really was not that much different. There were, definitely things that were cheaper in Texas in his case versus California, but then there were other things in California, believe it or not, that were cheaper or similar. And so it wasn't a huge delta, but that was something we just kind of just, oh, hey, here's some other thoughts and let's think this through or talk it out. And now I think he's anticipating graduating in May, and then we'll probably move back to somewhere in California. His tech space probably will take him to Silicon Valley, it appears, but at least that's California.
Yeah. And then it's like when you talk, you got 3 kids, I got 5 kids, they're most likely going to get married. They're most likely going to have kids. It would be nice to not just see my grandkids twice a year, which you and I, it's like, I'm not going to force my kids to live near me, but I would at least like to start having those conversations about, you got to do life with somebody. Why not do it with your siblings? Why not do it where you're going to have good support?
100%.
And support is everything. When you have a family, you need support, not just financially, but time, energy. So good. Okay, so that book talking about failure. Any other thoughts around failure that you were important, like middle school, high school, as they were kind of entering in young adult?
Yeah, I mean, we obviously encouraged them to try everything they could. They didn't have to be the best at it, whether it was baseball or soccer or lacrosse or basketball or whatever their sport was, but they needed to try and then resonate. And then they all kind of fell into something eventually that they felt passionate about and loved to do. But that was really it. And again, we didn't say, we weren't there to, win the championship. It was like, hey, there's so many benefits of socialization and just education and learning from being on a sports team. And so that was important. And I coached, I think, pretty much every one of them at one point or another. We have some tough seasons, right? Like we picked good families. Like I remember one baseball season. I mean, I don't think we won a whole lot of games, but we had a lot of fun. We had a bunch of good families. We had good kids. And so, yeah, you don't have to win everything to have fun or to be enjoying the moment. Sometimes just showing up, playing, hanging out with your buddies for an hour and a half on a Tuesday and a Thursday is enough.
Yeah, that's so good. I think sometimes we get caught up with the sports stuff and don't look at it as, socialization, like you mentioned, or character building. We just want our kid to be the very best. It's a lot of pressure. Okay, how was your relationship with your dad? In that, I like to ask 2 questions. What's something that you valued and appreciated about your dad? And then what's something that you would have changed about the way he showed up when you were a kid? And again, maybe you wouldn't actually change it, but it's, kind of shifted the way you wanted to show up.
So my dad's situation was a little different. So he had, his parents basically were, I think his mother died when he was 8. And then his father died when he was, I want to say early to mid 20s. Wow. So he really, he joined the Marines, ended up in California at 18 and basically put himself through college. And he just did what he had to do. And so I respect that a lot. He was, going to school at night, he was working, like there was no fallback plan for my dad. And so, he did the best he could. I don't think he understood in some cases, he liked to put a lot of pressure on me to thrive and succeed. And so, because, I don't think they had, a lot of the conversations were around, hey, we never had anything like this. You're going to do better than me and this and that. And so, but I respected the heck out of it. He is still a great friend. We talk all the time. We discuss business. We discuss other things. Him and I typically just go to dinners, just the 2 of us a lot, just to kind of catch up and talk. And so what would he do different? It's hard to say. He was tough. He had a temper. He would take it out on occasion. One thing, we did have a brief period where we didn't communicate for a window of time because he was, unhappy with what I was doing and something. I don't know if I think it was right out of college or something like that. And that was painful for, I think, both of us. And we think we both learned a lot from that. And so I would never want to do that to my kids.
And so the word painful, right, is like, if you were to give advice to say right now, I'm coming to you and I'm like, hey, my daughter's, in college and she's about to go do this thing. And I'm just like, I just don't get it. I don't agree with it. Option A is, I'm just going to not talk to her until she figures her shit out. right? What would your advice be to me from being a victim, like just lack of a better word of that, to say, how would you tell me to show up for my kid, even if I didn't agree with their choices?
So that's a tough one. And I try not to give advice unless really solicited. But in this particular case, I would try to basically encourage the person to look at the bigger picture,
Hmm.
right? Yeah, you can see it. Some people have to just experience it, live it, and then decide it's not for them. Or maybe this is the right choice for them and they will thrive and succeed, right? Think about like artists or musicians and other things that sometimes take a longer runway, or it's not like the business runway
Right.
that I took. Well, that doesn't mean it's wrong, right? So the question is, yes, you have this sentiment, you have this feeling, you have these concerns, but is it worth risking the relationship in total? Because sometimes it never comes back. And so the best you can do is create a foundation, be there, and then when they start making these decisions, hey, listen, I don't fully understand it or I don't support it, but you're my son, you're my daughter, I love you, and we're going to be there, blah, 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 and then move on. Because it's not your life, it's their life. At a certain point, they have to basically do their own thing. And obviously, if it's harmful or if it's you're concerned from a safety standpoint, that's different. But I'm talking about,
Yeah.
heck, I'm just going to go wing it and travel on my own as a 18-year-old girl. Like maybe that's not the best idea. And I'm not trying to pick on women versus men, but I would say the same thing about an 18-year-old person by themselves. What about a friend? What about like let's just think about this. I don't know. I'm so concerned of not wanting to lose the relationship that we've worked so hard to build that I may not agree, I may not love it, I may not understand it, but I'm going to do what I can to support my kid.
Yeah. As you were sharing that, you had said it twice, but like, is it worth losing the relationship? It may never come back. And I think sometimes as men, or especially just as humans in our day and age, we really look at relationships as transactional, right? Well, like I can't be in relationship with this person because they're doing something I don't like or whatever.
Right.
But like especially as a father, like sometimes we just have to freaking eat it. Like my wife and I were having this conversation at dinner last night because there was something with one of my kids and I was like, do we need to say this? My wife's like, they already know. So they already know. So if you go say it to them, it's not that we can't parent them, but if you continue, it's kind of like, it's just shame and guilt versus they already know what it is you think about this. So
Right.
it's a pretty delicate balance of like approval versus I love you regardless of,
Right.
And I think as dads, if we cannot be transactional, if our relationship and love can be without the transaction of whatever it is they aren't doing, my guess is that they'll probably come around more often than not.
I like to agree with you. I think also there's some other components, right? I think part of it is the community, right? It takes a village, so to speak,
sure.
right? So surrounding yourself with friends and other family members, or not family members, but families, I should say, that have similar thoughts and don't have to be 100% on the same page, but like, they're going to be supportive as well, right? That was like the old joke when I was coaching is I'd be like, hey, my assistant coach, hey, go tell so and so to do this because if I say it, they're not going to do it. If you do it, so that again, the village component.
Yeah.
The other
Good.
thing is that is important is one of those sayings like, show me your friends and I'll show you your future.
Mhm.
And so the people they surround themselves with can make a huge impact on how they look at things, the outcome, their trajectory. And so we've always tried to be very supportive and be that house where the kids came to our house even now we have a lot of their friends will come over, we'll do dinners with their friends. Like the more, and it's not that we don't enjoy their company because we actually do, but it keeps us in tune with, oh, that's kind of an interesting choice. Or are they making good choices? Are they doing the right things? Are they thriving? Are they building each other up because one's thriving more than the other? That says a lot. And so just kind of, I wouldn't even say monitoring is probably the best word, but just kind of paying attention. I think it's been impactful because I think my kids have, for the most part, made phenomenally good choices in friends in their circle that they follow. And so we have a lot of confidence in them because of that. And so they make good choices on good friends. They are going to have good outcomes as a general rule.
I love that. So I'd love to pause for dads and think about that. Are you monitoring your kid or are you paying attention? I think they're two different things. And I
I
am
agree.
guilty. Sign me up for I'm monitoring, which means I'm trying to control everything versus the word that I've kind of been leaning into. I was one of my podcasts recently is like, what am I observing? Like when I'm observing my kids, am I looking for how can I help them grow and stuff? Or am I calling up the things where I see that they have grown, the things that they're
Right.
doing well? So I love that. Are you monitoring your kids or are you paying attention to them? And I think the paying attention, more like love and care is there than,
Right.
correction through monitoring. Okay, this podcast is Fatherhood Field Notes, just really digging into like your philosophy, your life around fatherhood. But the theme is rebel and create. As men, we want to rebel against something. We like a fight, but not just to be destructive, to create something beautiful in its place. So when you hear the theme rebel and create, what's something that you are rebelling against and hoping to create in its place?
So I would say it's a really minor rebellion. Is I don't just take or accept the fact that the kids are 18 or graduate college and then they're out of our
Mm.
lives. I want to continue to foster travel together, time together, and opportunities for them to continue to hang out with us, participate because they want to, not because we're forcing them to, not because we're bribing them, but because it's just part of our kind of, I guess, our culture or part of our family dynamic. That to me is big. I see a lot of people go, oh, they're 18, I'm off the hook, or they're done with college, I never have to deal with anything again. I don't think that's true. I think that we
Mhm.
have to continually support them. Now, we don't want to placate them and then keep them, living in the garage or the basement until they're 40. All right, that's not ideal.
Right.
We don't want to prevent them from launching, but at the same time, we can
Mhm.
participate. We can be a guidance if they need it, a sounding board, or just someone that's this in their corner to root them on.
Yeah, I love that. I sometimes think when people have that mindset of like, oh, they're 18 and I'm off the hook, I almost wonder if to some degree they had one foot in, one foot out, kind of the kids' whole childhood and middle school. Cause there's like, I'm thinking about how I'm going to play golf on Tuesdays when this kid moves out of the house. I don't know. It's like, but then the sad thing is I think when that dude gets to golfing on Tuesday, they're like, holy crap, I just wish my son was here, my daughter was here, or that I would have made the most of it back then. Okay, so you guys made family vacations a thing, right? Like
Yes.
travel. Was this, so going back, when you and your wife first got together, was this something that your relationship had built on? Did you grow up traveling? When did traveling become important? And then you guys kind of fall in love with it.
Sure. So, no, both my wife and I came from very average means. I mean, until my wife and I got married, she had never been out of the country, which is fine. But it was just something that we wanted to do. We loved to do it. And we really didn't have an opportunity or anywhere to leave our kids. So we just wanted to continue to do it. And as we evolved and my business became more stable and grew, and it's about experiences, right? Like,
Mhm.
no, I don't know. My kids aren't going to remember the bike I bought them at, 6 years old or 8 years old, or the video game or whatever. They're going to remember that time as a family that we got lost in wherever,
Mhm.
or that we had this amazing pasta in Italy, or we did this Hawaiian vacation, or whatever it may be. So experiences and valuable or quality time together was more important than just things. And don't
Mhm.
get me wrong, we're caught up. We buy, too much stuff and et cetera. But the vacation became kind of our foundation of our family. And so we just love to do it. And that was an area of concern, I will be honest with you, as my kids started going to college and they started, graduating and this and that. Are they still going to do it? Are they going to still want to go with us? And this past June, my daughter graduated high school. She wanted to do like a beachy type of sun baked or based trip. And so we went to the British Virgin Islands for a week or 10 days or whatever it was, and just had the greatest time. Again, we never turned the TV on. We had all these TVs. We had all this. It was game time. We were in the water. We were doing water toys. We were playing games. We were eating these amazing meals. We were going having drinks together. It was fantastic. And so actually, I have a text chain right now with the family on where we're going to go this June. And so they're providing like choice one, two, three, and that kind of feedback. So anyway, that's exciting that they're all again trying to go. So now they're they only get so much time off work, and they're going to basically give up a portion of that to come hang out with us. I love that. Now, what is it going to look like in a couple of years when their partners are involved? Hopefully, that's still the case, and it's probably only going to get more complicated when they have kids. And so we'll see. but we'll, adapt and figure out what to do when and if that time comes.
Love it. What was a favorite family vacation that you guys had?
Gosh, there's a lot of good ones. One of my favorites was our first time to Croatia. That's where my wife's family is from. So we were able to, through some research, I found the town that her great great grandparents were born in.
Wow.
And we went to visit that town and then fell in love with that country. It's an amazing country. It was communist until 1995. It's all the good of Europe, but it's so new, it hasn't developed any of the bad. And it's just gorgeous, and the people are friendly, and it's reasonable price. So that was really cool to just go down and just see like the heritage and walk where, her, like the church where her great great grandparents were baptized.
Wow.
And
Wow.
and stuff like that. That was cool. Another one that really stands out is we did as a bucket list one was we did an Africa trip. That was amazing. We did the safari and the whole deal, and that was epic. And so it just reinforced. And unfortunately, it doesn't scratch the itch. It makes it makes us want to do more.
Yeah, our very first, when the kids were young, we bought an RV because it's like what we could do, right? We could afford to do an RV. And it's like, man, those are the best memories with the little kids. And then 2020 was like the first time we took everybody on an airplane. And then since then, it's been, we've gone lots of places. And I think there is, because I meet a lot of guys who are like, never want to leave the United States. And I think there's a little bit of a miss there. And I would just challenge you guys to go explore somewhere new. Like you could go to an English speaking country. And the funny thing is like, it's less expensive than traveling in the US in a lot of circumstances. It's
100%.
It's wild. Like we were going to go to Tennessee and take our family and do a festival. And it was the same. It was actually less. We went to Ireland for less money than we would have gone to Tennessee. And so it's like, dude, and I think going back to something you talked about is the confidence it teaches your children to like be in an airport and be like, okay, where's our bags going to be? Where are we getting through here? It's like, and I'm sure you did the same thing, but it's like, all right, kids, get us to our gate or whatever. Right. Or even being in learning in another country, their transit, like how to get on a bus, how to get on a train, how to do these things. I just think it builds confidence. And then on top of just character building, you are exposing them to history and culture and food in a way that they're just not going to get from school. They're just not.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the good thing is I always say, get out of the bubble, right? Like, we have a nice little bubble here in San Diego, and like my kids got to do mission trips as part of so they went to like Thailand, and my daughter went to Rwanda and worked at a school in Africa. And like, it's not first class, but they talk about those experiences very positively. And I think one of the triggers for me on travels, I studied my senior year, a couple of months, I studied in an international business program over in Europe.
Wow.
And man, I felt like I learned more in that 2 or 3 month window than I did 4 years of college. And so I think that was one of the kickstarts for us. And now my middle just got back where I picked up my son as he went to a school-based business trip to Thailand and Vietnam. And so we did 11 days there doing presentations and meeting, going to the manufacturing facilities and et cetera, and had to do business projects on it. And what a great experience.
Yeah.
He was taking pictures and sending us pictures of meals that were $2, that it would be like a drink and pho and all these other things that were just amazing. And he, to your point earlier, we sat, 2-hour ride home, and all I got was 2 hours of stories about what he had just done over the last 10 or 11 days and what he liked about this country. And this really stood out in Vietnam, or this stood out in Thailand, or this project really made me kind of dive deep into this. It was awesome.
Man, that's so good. I think we really need to be encouraging our kids, even as like, if you're listening to this, like we went as a family on a mission trip. Like if you feel like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine sending my kid on a mission trip, you could go as a family. We went with our church just to Mexico, flew into San Diego, drove across the border. And even that was so eye-opening for our kids. It's like, we fly into San Diego, we go get Chick-fil-A, $100 worth of Chick-fil-A, right? Like whatever you want to drink, this, that, and the other. Hour later, you're in this like, oh my gosh, totally different world.
Yeah.
Totally. That was very helpful for our kids. Jim, thank you so much. Before I ask my final couple of questions here, anything that's like just sitting in your brain that you're like, man, if I were to talk about fatherhood, I would want to share this story or share this idea or this thought. We talked about a lot of good stuff, but I don't want to miss anything if anything's roaming around in your brain.
Only thing that kind of jumps out at me is work's always going to be there. There's always going to be more work, more emails, more texts, more whatever. If you can, within reason, to just take off early, show up at a baseball game, go. You mentioned the RV. We had an RV for years, and because my wife and I had never been to a national park until we had gotten married, and we visited a lot. And just 5 people in an RV is comedy. I mean, we broke down, and I mean, we still have stories that we still talk about, even though, and it wasn't expensive. Like it was, those were just the best memories, because that's what you're going to leave, from a legacy standpoint. Is no one's going to remember I was really good at insurance, or I was really good at this. They're going to remember how you made them feel and how the kids saw and basically want to either, hopefully, ideally mimic you in the future. I think that's the biggest compliment, is that, I want to be like or similar to my mom or dad in the way they treated us, the way they made us feel, the way they raised us. Those are the things that I think we're just striving to do the best we can, and hopefully we're doing a good job.
So good. So typically my last question is around legacy. We've kind of talked about a lot of legacy things. And so we'll just fast forward like maybe 20 years. What kind of grandfather do you want to be? When your grandkids talk about you, what are a couple of things that you'd like them to say?
I can't wait to go to grandpa's house, or I can't wait to see grandpa. That's something that obviously I'm not at that point, but a lot of people I know have started having grandkids, and it's, I guess, an amazing experience. So I look forward truly to that. And I think the pride will come from watching our kids raise their kids.
Yeah.
And when we see similarities or see a pattern or something that we did, I think that really is a testament to doing it right? Because a lot of us probably are doing things where we know what not to do based on how we were raised, but showing, I think seeing things that they're doing that we did for them or with them, I think would be a really impactful for my wife and I. I'm not a big legacy guy. Like, I don't need my name on buildings. I don't need credit for things, but I really want the people in my life to feel like they felt valued and important, and that my kids feel that they were raised in a caring, loving family, and that they want to strive to continue that for their families and their future family. And so I think, to me, that's the biggest thing, because at some point we're all going to move on. And, again, no one's going to remember, how many cars or watches, and don't get me wrong, I love all those things, but family and the experience, and that's our whole theme now. We're all about experiences. What unique experience can we do together as a family, whether it's in dining, travel, whatever? That's the stuff we want to share with each other.
Man, I love it. And I just want guys to walk away from this conversation with this. I think a lot of us, even us, like we're grown men, we say, my dad loved me. And I think most of our kids know that they're loved. But what Jim just said is like, I want to be remembered for the people around me feeling valued and important. And that's different than being loved sometimes. Like sometimes we're like, we say, yeah, my dad loved me. But if your kids were given a quiz right now and valued and important were on the list to circle, would they say that about the way you've shown up yesterday, the day before, this week? And dads, you don't got to be the wealthiest. You don't have to have the most time. You can show your kids that they're valuable and important in a moment, in an embrace, in a word of encouragement. So I just encourage you guys to go love your kids well this week, serve them well, and start to build that legacy that matters. So Jim, that's what you're doing. And I just, well, hey, you're doing it, right? We know it's a wrestle. We know it's hard. So I applaud you for it. I applaud you for 26 years of marriage, loving your kids well, walking well with them as they're transitioning from being teens in your home to being young adults, and really fighting for that relationship and doing it in those loving, simple ways, picking them up from the airport. So my friend, thank you. I look forward to our paths crossing again in the future, and just keep being you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ned.
All right. Until next time. What a great conversation. I'm inspired by Jim. I look up to Jim. Whether Jim knows this or not, I consider him a mentor, especially in the business world. We're in similar businesses, and he's just a decade or so above where I'm at. And it's inspiring to see him and the way that he's loved and served his family through it all. I think the nuggets that I'm taking for myself is continuing to talk to my kids about travel, create experience to travel with them, my mind being open to what's possible with travel, thinking about mission work for my kids, like encouraging that in their early, 19, 20, 21, continuing to cultivate relationship that is not just father kid or like parenting, but what can be taken into 25, 30, 35, planting that seed, that family does life together, even if we're not neighbors. I think it's really important. All right, my friends, if these conversations are helpful, please write a review. It helps spread the word that what you and I are doing every day, loving our families with the best that we possibly can and learning and growing. It helps spread the word that fatherhood matters. So please write a review. Shoot a text to a friend. Hey, I listen to this podcast on occasion. You're a great dad, and I think you would enjoy it. Or if so, write a review, share it with a friend. If you have a great podcast guest you'd love to hear on here, shoot me an email, ned@rebelandcreate.com. Thank you to all you dads out there listening to Fatherhood Field Notes podcast. What you do matters. Don't be like everybody else. Be yourself. That's who your kids, spouse, and community needs. This is your guide, Ned Shout. Together, let's rebel against the view that fatherhood has little impact, and let's create lives engaged in mastering the craft of fatherhood. I look forward to hanging out with you next time.